Hi everyone, it's me, Mrs. Wingers, and I am here to read a nonfiction book. Twisters is my topic today. I picked this story again because I tried to pick a wide range of topics to read about for informational texts, not always just about animals, right? So I picked a book about weather. So let's take a look and get some reading skills written down. Additional reading progression. So I'm gonna just take a look, pop through some of these slides. I want to pick something that I haven't used a lot. Maybe punctuation and fluency. That's kind of a easier one. I might think about some cause and effect as well. So inferring within the text, thinking about cohesion. Yeah, I feel like those are going to be two skills that will be good for me today. Okay, so technically this isn't a skill that I am taking notes about. It's not something I wrote down, but anytime you start any new book, always do some orienting. So I'm going to do that first. I'm going to take a look at the cover where I see clearly this book is about twisters. I'm going to take a look at the back. When stormy winds start to twist at incredible speeds, watch out for some wild weather. So that's just a tiny blurb. Most of this on the back is talking about the reading level, but I'm just going to take a quick peek at some of maybe the table of contents, some of the images. No table of contents, okay, but I'm seeing that it starts in with like a little story. Looks like there's a twister here. There's some pop outs. Oh, there's a car in the sky. That's crazy. So it seems like this whole book is going to be about maybe one twister, like a story, like a narrative nonfiction it must be. Oh yeah, here's some photographs. So a story that includes lots of information about twisters. Well, that is good to know. Right up front, I see there's also an index and a list of twister facts. Okay, so I don't really need to write that down, but I can hold it in my brain that I know this is going to be not just like a straight up informational text. It's going to have some narrative elements. It's going to tell a little bit of a story. So let me get started. Rob was working in his farmyard in Texas. It was a peaceful spring day, but his dog Barney was unhappy. He hid under a tractor and would not come out. Rob wondered if Barney was ill. Suddenly, the sky went dark. Hailstones as big as golf balls pelted down from the sky. Thunder rolled and lightning flashed. Then came a deathly stillness in the air. Somehow, Barney had known. So there's also this little pop-out up here at the top. It's not a part of the story, right? But it's a pop-out that says, second sense, animals have sharper senses than we have. Many can sense changes in weather, like just before a bad storm. I've heard that before. It's something I knew. A moment later, huge black clouds began to spin. They bubbled at the top like boiling milk. Gusts of winds blew straw around. Just then, a finger of cloud spiraled down from the sky. A twister. Rob stood rooted to the spot. The twister touched the ground. Mud and grass swirled up like smoke from a bonfire. That was only the start. The twister began to move. It skipped and bounced across the field. It grew faster and faster and dirtier as it picked up mud from the ground. Okay. So there's also another pop out down here. This is water spouts. Water spouts. Twisters out at sea are called water spouts. They whisk up water. The tallest one ever seen was 1 mile high. 1 mile, that's crazy. Okay, I'm going to pause and take a few notes here. I'm noticing that this, I'm doing some of this inferring work, which let me pop back over to the learning progression to show some sentence starters I might use. Skill again, which is inferring, right? I can talk about information and ideas that hold the parts of the text together. Usually this means I talk about the relationship between cause and effects, or things that happen first or next, and main ideas and examples. I might also talk about the reasons for something or the kinds of something. Okay, so some of my sentence starters could be, I noticed blank happened because of, or blank caused something. First, something happened as a result. You know, this one's kind of sticking out to me because in that part I just read, it really talked a lot about like the wind made the twister happen, and then the twister made all of the mud and rocks and hay and stone move around across the fields. I think that's going to be my first. Okay, so I just put on the page numbers. I said first the wind started swirling and that caused a twister. Then the twister started picking up mud, rocks, hay, and dirt. Then I identified this little section as cause and effect. Rob watched in horror as the twister went toward his neighbor's farm. It picked up straw, trees, and even a farm truck. It spun them around in its funnel. Rob sighed with relief when the twister moved away. He thought he was safe, but then the twister changed directions, right towards him. Okay, so I just flipped back because I was noticing some expert words, water spouts, and then the funnel. These are words that are important, so I'm going to just collect them on a sticky note. Suddenly, the twister was hanging right over Rob's farm. There was a noise like a rushing waterfall. Then, bang, the barn exploded as if a bomb had gone off inside. I just want to note that as, you know, this is nonfiction, but wow, this narrative elements that are in this are really making this an interesting read. Rob ran with Barney to the cellar in his house. Cellar, another expert word. His ears were hurting and he could hardly breathe. That's because the air pressure inside a twister is very low. This makes people's ears ache and causes buildings to explode. Okay, two things I want to add just really quickly. Air pressure and cellar. Just as Rob reached the cellar, his front porch flew off with an ear-splitting crash. Then came a smash as the house's windows blew in. 2 minutes later, all was silent. Rob came up from the cellar. Furniture lay smashed on the floor. Most of the doors and windows were gone. Rob felt lucky to be alive. Neighbors helped Rob clean up. The twister didn't damage the neighbor's house. Okay, so I'm noticing from that page, when that page ended, it's like this little story that started, this informational text is now finished. So now we're really into the whole like informational part of this text. Twisters can form when cold air meets warm air. The warm air is sucked up in a swirling column called a funnel cloud. It spins at great speed. Twisters contain the most deadly winds in the world. No one knows what a twister will do next. It can lift up a large truck and smash it to pieces, but leave small objects undamaged. A twister once picked up a baby and set him down safely 300 feet away. The baby didn't even wake up. Oh my goodness, that's like, whew, my heart just stopped for a second. Strange showers is a little pop out here. When twisters drop things they've picked up, a strange thing can happen. A twister in England caused a shower of frogs. That is weird. Okay, so now we're learning a little bit about how twisters are formed. This seems like an important note that I should take. Okay, so I've just noted like a 1, 2, 3, first, next, then, how a twister is formed. 1, cold air meets warm air. 2, warm air is sucked up into the column. And 3, the air spins at great speeds. I'm going to add, and becomes very powerful. There are lots of strange stories about twisters. Oh, you know what? Messing up those words just reminded me that fluency has been one of my goals. I'm going to really tune in to my fluency and how I pause at punctuation on these next few pages. There are lots of strange stories about twisters. A twister once blew away a man's birth certificate. The twister carried it 50 miles, then dropped it in a friend's garden. Another twister sucked up some roses and water from a vase. It dropped them in another room, but it left the vase on the table. One twister picked up a jar of pickles. It carried it for miles without damaging it. That's wild. Twisters come in many different shapes and sizes. They can be thin, white, and wispy, or they can be big, thick, and black. They can even be in color. If a twister travels across a muddy field, the mud turns it brown and very smelly. The twisters can grow bigger and faster as they grow along. Some look like they have a loop or a knot in the middle. Some are wider at the bottom than at the top. There are different shapes like a tube. Others can look like a slice of pie. Okay, so 2 things I'm noticing. 1, my fluency is on point today. I'm pausing at all the periods, so I'm just going to take a note of that. And then 2, I've noticed one of my goals, inferring about the text, the author's telling me about different types of twisters. So I'm just going to make some notes about that. I made a little web kind of thing with the different types of twisters. Some of the details in the text where they could be big, small, white, narrow, black, brown, wide. And I just wrote a note, there can be many types of twisters. Lots of people have seen a twister from the outside, but only a few have looked inside a twister and survived. A farmer named Will Keller once looked up into a twister from his underground shelter. Just as he closed the door of his shelter, he saw lots of mini twisters inside the big twister. These mini twisters can rip through a building and slice it to shreds. Here's another pop-out. It says twister speeds. Some twisters travel only as fast as a person walking. Others travel as fast as express trains. Wow, so many differences in the types of twisters. I'm just going to really quickly add fast and slow to my list of types of twisters. Twisters are also known as tornadoes. There is an area in the U.S. that is called Tornado Alley. It is famous for its deadly twisters. Up to 300 occur there every year between April and July. They kill more than 80 people. Twisters during these months, Twisters form during these months as warm air from the south meets cold airs from the north, right over Tornado Alley. Now there's also a map inside here, map of the United States, and it shows, here's the key that shows where Tornado Alley is. So right here in this area is where it's called Tornado Alley. There's also another text pop out where it says, home sweet home. People stay in Tornado Alley because it is their home. If their houses are destroyed, they can just rebuild. Wow, resilient. Oh, so here's an image, a photograph of a destroyed house. Wow. Twisters are graded from 0 to 5 on a scale called the Fujita scale. An F0 damages chimneys. An F1 snaps telephone poles. An F2 rips off roofs. An F3 flips over trains. An F4 destroys even strong homes. An F5 leaves few things standing. In 1999, an F5 ripped through Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. It killed 45 people. And there's a pop-out down here called the worst twister. In 1925, one twister in Tornado Alley destroyed 4 towns in less than 4 hours, and it killed 689 people. Wow, that's crazy. So there's a lot of information here about the different levels, different types of twisters. that was one of my goals, like looking, inferring within the text and kind of analyzing the different types of text structures. This is telling me the different scales, right? Different types of twisters based on the scale. So I'm just going to take a quick note of that. So I've just noted here on the scale of twisters, the different levels, and I did fill in all of them because I don't need all of that information. I'm just kind of taking some notes about the different types. So 0 would be damages chimneys, 2 is rips off roofs, 4 is flips trains, and 5 is leaves few things standing. So it's just a general idea of how the scale of the twisters works. People in Tornado Alley are well prepared for twisters. Most of them have an underground shelter outside their home. Some people in Texas have a fiberglass shelter buried in their backyard. People without a shelter hide in a cellar or small room in the middle of their house. In the Malone family next to their, this is the Malone family next to their fiberglass shelter before it is buried. Wow, crazy. So they bury that thing in the ground so when the twisters come through, they can get in and they'll be safe. How interesting. Gary England is a TV weather reporter in Oklahoma City. When lots of twisters are expected, Gary's team stays on the air for 30 hours or more. Scientists tell Gary what the weather will be. Gary can then tell the viewers. The scientists use a computer to help them forecast twisters. The computer makes a picture that shows where a twister is and how fast it is traveling. The scientists can tell Gary what they think will happen, but storm trackers on the road know exactly what is happening. These people risk their lives to find and follow twisters. Many of them have modern equipment, such as a satellite dish. The trackers tell Gary all about a twister, where it is, and where it is going. They can even tell him when a twister is brewing. In the past, people did not know when a twister was coming. Today, the trackers and scientists give people time to find shelter, and hundreds of lives are saved. So there's a storm tracker in their truck. So I'm noticing here kind of towards the end, it's the end. All we see is a list of facts and then an index. So now we're at the end. And I'm noticing how like in the beginning, the story was a narrative nonfiction. So it was this story about, what was his name? This guy, Rob, working in his farmyard in Texas. And then it kind of shifted into just telling facts, right? Like the levels, the scales, the types of twisters. Then it went back to kind of telling a story about the weather guy, Gary England. So I don't know, that's just kind of what I'm thinking now at the end of the story when I want to do like a little stop and jot. I'm thinking about how this story did a lot of shifting. It started as narrative nonfiction, then it went into informational nonfiction, then it went into like back of a narrative nonfiction. So I'm going to just take a quick note about that. Okay, so now I'm just about done here. I wrote, this book is interesting to me because it started as narrative nonfiction, then it went into informational nonfiction, and then finally back to narrative nonfiction at the end. Even though the genre flipped back and forth throughout the book, it still taught me a lot of information and facts. Then I took my expert word sticky note from the book and I taped it in. You can see it's shiny there, right? There's tape. And I just wrote a little note. These are expert words that I read inside this book. I think waterspout and Fujita scale are the most interesting. And now the final thing I'm going to do is add it to my book log, which and I think we'll give it like a, I don't know, another 2 out of 5. It wasn't amazing, but it was fine. Okay, there you have it. Another informational read, this book about twisters. I am going to keep adding informational read-alouds because, you know, sometimes I prefer to read fiction books. And so I think that maybe I've been making too many of those. Plus, you know, there's chapter books in fiction, which take a long time, you know, a lot of videos to get through a chapter book. But if you have a topic you want to learn more about and you're thinking maybe you want to watch a read aloud for it, let me know. Tell me the topic that you want and I'll find a book to read. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.